Darkcast Network. The light shines brightest on our indie podcasts.
Hey, Squiddies! It's your host, Dre from the Tattoo Squid Podcast, here to take you on a deep dive and have my 8 arms and 2 tentacles reach out to all different discussions, whether it be interviews with other podcasts, and talk about horror, Halloween, heavy metal, camping, comic books, board games, Funko Pops. So, enjoy the ride to the bottom of the sea and also the depths of my mind. Plus, you can also follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, and wherever you find podcasts that are available.
Hey, Rainbow Warriors. This is my disclaimer. Beyond the Rainbow is a true crime podcast. It's not suitable for young children, and maybe not even for some adults. I tend to swear like a sailor, and I'm kind of proud of that. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey there, Rainbow Warriors, and welcome to a Beyond the Rainbow True Crimes of the LGBTQ+ Minisode. I'm your host, CJ. Our Minisode's missing but not forgotten LGBTQ+ person is Etzli Cortez-Trujillo, who goes by Ez. Ez is gender non-conforming, using the pronouns they and them and she. Ez went missing from Ogden, Utah last year on April 23, 2020. They're between 5'11" and 6 feet tall and weigh between 150 and 170 pounds. Ez is Hispanic with dark brown hair and brown eyes. At the time of their disappearance, they had a buzz-cut hairstyle with a full beard. Ez was wearing a green, yellow, and red reggae-style hooded sweatshirt with a matching beanie hat, a white Henley-type shirt, and black pajama bottoms. Ez was 21 at the time of their disappearance, but just had a birthday last month in September. Ez would be 23 now. Ez has dual citizenship in both the U.S. and Mexico. The day Ez disappeared, they were dealing with some mental trauma in their life, and they went for a drive to clear their head. It appears they were in a minor car accident on the North Ogden Divide Road in the North Ogden Canyon. Ez was last seen at 1 p.m., standing by the side of the road next to their silver Volkswagen. The person who saw them was a Grubhub driver. That driver pulled over and asked Ez if they needed a ride. Ez was going to accept a ride, but the Grubhub driver said they had to make a delivery real quick, and then they'd be back to pick Ez up. When the Grubhub driver got back to where Ez last was, Ez's car was still there, but Ez was gone. Weber County Sheriff received a call about a wrecked vehicle on North Ogden Divide Road. So they're the one that discovered Ez's car abandoned. The following day, Ez's roommate, knowing Ez was distraught, filed a missing persons report on them. There was a drone search of the area that Ez was last seen at, but nothing came of it. Weber County Sheriff passed Ez's case off to Salt Lake City Police, and honestly, not much has been done to find Ez, which understandably upsets Ez's family. In fact, in March of 2021, Salt Lake City Police, they closed Ez's file until more information comes about. And for some reason, that just doesn't sound right to me. They should never close the case until they're found. I just don't get why they would close a case even temporarily. What if it was their loved one? Ez's phone pinged in Kirkland, New Mexico after their disappearance. Why aren't the Salt Lake City Police following that ping lead? Ez's family believes Salt Lake City Police doesn't really care enough to keep looking because 1, Ez is Hispanic, and number 2, because Ez is LGBTQ+. And you can't really blame the family for feeling like that with the track record of past cases. Why has Ez not been found? It's been a year and a half. Should you have any information on Ez's whereabouts, please call the Salt Lake City Police at area code 801-779-3000 and reference case number SL20-71931. Our crime quickie this episode comes to us from Hong Kong. Please tell my family it was an accident and that I was a good police officer. That's how the final letter read. 2 senior Royal Hong Kong police officers found the letter when they busted into the home of one of their own, John MacLennan, on January 15, 1980. They also found John's body with a .38 caliber police-issued revolver that was laying on the floor next to him. John had been shot 5 times in his chest. Suicide was the ruling. In 1973, 22-year-old Scottish farm boy John MacLennan had stepped off the plane in Hong Kong. He was there to join the Royal Hong Kong Police Force. First, John had physical and academic tests that he had to pass just to become a regular officer. He did this quite rapidly and successfully. It wasn't much long later that he slid easily into the role of a Royal Hong Kong officer. John really was a good officer. He was loyal and diligent in his duties, but when it was time to be off the clock, John was a partier. John loved to drink, and he let his hair down at the colorful nightclubs of Hong Kong. He often would partake in these clubs with off-duty co-workers. John was seen by his co-workers as something of a ladies' man. He had many female conquests at these clubs. What his co-workers didn't see were the men that John would leave with as well. No one in John's life knew when he began to seek the company and gratification of encounters with the same sex. Being gay or a bisexual man in Hong Kong was illegal up until the year 1991. John's life would end 11 years before that in 1980. While out with his co-workers that he considered friends, John would be quick to make gay jokes and say negative comments about anyone that they thought appeared gay. It was all part of John's tough guy cop act. Plus, how would it look for a cop to be engaging in not just immoral, but illegal acts? Ironically, at his work, John was trusted to be one of the few officers who had access to the Black Book. This was a huge file with the names of Hong Kong government officials and police officers who were suspected of being gay. The Black Book was a collaboration with law enforcement and the crime syndicate triads. The triads would capture young boys and give them over to high-ranking government officials for sexual pleasure. This sounds much more like a pedophile ring than a gay sex ring, but I think it was both. Although gay trysts with consenting adults were also noted in the files of the Black Book, John was relieved to see his name wasn't in the file. The goal was to eventually catch in the act and arrest the people whose names were in the file for homo crimes. For years, John helped work on this special task force, and he helped to put high government officials behind bars for what was thought to be sexually deviant acts. One day, as 17-year-old David Lau from Hong Kong, he was studying abroad in Scotland, but he was back visiting his home country because David wanted to be part of the Hong Kong Royal Police. David was introduced to John because of John being from Scotland and all, and a royal police officer in Hong Kong. David went to John's office for an application to join the force. John invited David over to his home, which I believe all of the force that are unmarried maybe live in what's called the quarters. So John invited David to his quarters. They're little apartments, and what makes me believe this is because the headquarters resembles a high-rise apartment building. So I think that the single officers must live in there. Married ones might too, I'm not sure. David went back with John to his quarters. John told David to go take a shower. David said, "No, thank you." And John became insistent, and he kind of pushed David. It sounds like it might have been just an awkward attempt at seduction, but when David left, he told his friend afterwards. He said it was a super awkward encounter with John. Well, David's friend told his father, who was an ex-sergeant on the police force, and the ex-sergeant on the police force was fired because John found the father dabbling in a police corruption. Now we have a little bit of retaliation going on. The ex-sergeant filed a formal complaint against John. 6 weeks later, when the Special Investigation Unit went to investigate the complaint, David was back in Scotland and unable to be found to provide witness to the alleged immoral conduct of John. But because the head of the Special Investigation Unit was gay and wanted any attention off himself, he dragged John over the coals and fired him. John denied he was gay. He said the reason he was being fired is because he knew of a whole list of gay men in high-ranking government positions. A female activist took up John's case. She went to the current governor and was able to get John reinstated to be an officer again, but not as a black book enforcer. John was transferred away from that operation. Having John reinstated pissed off the Special Investigation Unit. Towards the end of 1979, they found a married bisexual man who claimed he had sex with John. The reason the bisexual man said this was because he was being threatened. The Special Investigation Unit told the man that they'd tell his wife about an incestuous relationship he was in with a family member if the man didn't admit to having sex with John. On the morning of January 15, 1980, when John didn't show up to the special investigator's office to be questioned, they broke into his apartment and they found him dead with 5 bullet wounds to his chest. John was only 29 years old. Because of the note found next to his body that several witnesses said was John's handwriting, and the knowledge John was worried about being exposed for his lifestyle, his death was quickly determined to be a suicide. Others state that the way the note was written, please tell my family that this was an accident and I was a good police officer, isn't how someone whose first language is English would write a suicide note. Public outrage to the ruling of suicide questioned the police's ruling. There was no way John's wounds were self-inflicted. If someone were attempting to take their own life via a gun, the shot would nearly always be to the victim's head, not the chest. And then the recoil of the gun itself would make multiple shots into someone's own chest impossible, let alone 5 shots in a row. How about the police investigation? These were royal police after all. You'd think they'd be thorough if nothing else. The original story constructed by the police was that a maid found John dead. There was no mention of 5 shots to his chest, and then it was leaked about the multiple shots, and the news story came out that 2 Special Investigation Unit officers busted in to find John. The whole investigation was lazy and incomplete. No one even examined and reported if there was gunpowder residue on John's hand and fingers, not to mention the commingling of the force with the crime-syndicated triads. The coroner who initially ruled John's death suicide recanted, and he claimed John's death was inconclusive, which makes me almost positive the Royal Hong Kong Special Investigation Unit could add murder to their shoddy police work and other crimes the corrupt force of 1980 were involved in. And if it wasn't John's own police force that got him, it was a government official making sure John wasn't able to do his job and out him. It's been, 41 and a half years since John's life was taken? And 30 years since being gay no longer was legally considered a crime in Hong Kong. This incident of John MacLennan's death was considered the starting point of Hong Kong's gay liberation movement. Let's just hope that the Royal Hong Kong Police Force has purged itself of most of this corruption and now earns their title of royal. We will probably never know the true answer to how John MacLennan really died. John will most likely never receive unicorn justice. Rest in power, John. Love you, Rainbow Warriors. Remember, it's not a crime to be gay. Unless you're a murderer.
The Oracle Network.